Thank you for having us. We're excited to talk about space, and I hope all of y'all are ready to geek out on it as well as I am. So without further ado, here is Graham and Stephanie, SMEs in the space industry. So Graham, I would love to know a little...
Aaron. Wrong one. Sorry.
Aaron, I would love to know, why did you start your company, and could you tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, so Space Ventures really is, it's kind of a passion project, right? I always have been interested in investing and alternative investing and looking for opportunities with private companies, and love space, love what was the technology that was going on. The opportunity for people to do that, especially non-accredited investors, essentially non-existent. There were some space SPACs that went out last year, but before that, it was essentially non-existent. So I felt like there was an opportunity for us to really create what I wanted in the market, and so that's what we did. We just went ahead and tried to make that happen, and seeing all the crazy stuff that SpaceX is doing and things like that, it's just so incredibly inspiring. So we wanted to be a part of that and create more innovation and inspire more people.
Beautiful. And Stephanie, what about you? How did you get in the space industry? What led you to where you are today, and at the same time led you to Aaron's platform?
Well, I was interested in space from when I was a little girl. We were talking about this backstage, watching Star Trek, watching Doctor Who. My dad was a big science fiction buff, and we had a lot of science fiction in the house. So I went to college specifically to study aerospace engineering, and that's what I've worked in. So I've been at Princeton Satellite Systems my entire career, so more than 20 years now. And today, we're starting to work on something really exciting. We're working on fusion propulsion, which is actually bringing fusion into space and using it to get to interplanetary destinations faster. And Space Ventures being a platform that focuses on space adventure, space investors, and those people that are really excited about space, seemed like the right fit for us, because fusion propulsion is that science fiction to reality item that people can really be excited about. And so to be able to bring it to the public and have the public support us seemed like a great fit.
Beautiful. There's so much happening in space right now, and if you're on the outside and you're looking in, most people think it's unattainable, and it's in the billions of dollars. So what are some of the technology right now that interests y'all, of where we're going?
Yeah, I can take this. There's a lot of different things. One of the things I like to make sure that gets put across and gets into people's minds is that space is a place, not an industry, right? So you got to think of it as more of a horizontal across different industries potentially. And so there's like almost an infinite number of things you can do that are really interesting and accessible. Now, space, we often think about tourism and billionaires, having fun and blowing their money on, crazy stuff, and it could have gone to better places. But the reality is that space has had a massive impact on our economies today, right? GPS is essentially in everything we do, and it's a system that is being disrupted now and is threatened from a defense angle and all sorts of stuff. And there's also, camera phones are essentially due to NASA. Selfies are essentially NASA's fault, so I guess we can blame NASA for that.
That miniaturization.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to interesting things and technologies happening in space, specifically to address your question, I think from an investment standpoint, a lot of the focus is around Earth specifically. So by 2030, many in the industry expect us to have 100,000 satellites, which, to give context, there's only like about 5,000 right now. And before that, there was only like 3,000, like last year. So it's starting to grow quite quickly. It's a whole infrastructural set that is, a lot of it's based on data or telecommunications, so Starlink and things like that. It's all about Earth, right? While it's in space, it's really about delivering value back to Earth. And so that's a huge opportunity from an investment perspective that's near term. I mean, because put a satellite up and you sell data back to Earth, you're making money relatively quickly. So that's actually quite accessible as far as from an investment perspective. When it comes to like what I'm interested in, real cool stuff like fusion. We've got a Macron beam, which is essentially a cool launching system that's going to be able to potentially reduce launch costs down to $50 per kilogram, another factor of 10x reduction in cost. Those are the stuff that I get a little bit more excited about. The really big, really potentially massive markets that they're home run shots, right? It's moon shots, if you will, that you're really trying to totally change the world. And I think that's fundamentally the investors that's on our platform, what they're looking for. They're looking for things that is a future that you want to see happen, right? So I think when it's something cool, something interesting, and something you feel like is world-changing, you can actually get excited about it, and your ROI calculation's a little different because you're investing in something that is a future you want to see happen.
What about you, Stephanie? What are you excited about?
Well, as I said, I always wanted to work in space, and I'm an actual aerospace engineer. I work on actual satellite designs, how to control satellites, but I've worked on a lot of exciting technologies like solar sails, which is a big membrane in space that uses the sun to move instead of propellant. I've worked on formation flying, where you have multiple satellites, not just in a constellation, but actually close together and making a shape that's important for what they're imaging on the ground that present really interesting control problems. So there's been a ton of stuff to work on as an engineer besides just satellite designs. And now the fusion propulsion is really exciting because it's about getting to planetary destinations faster, bringing more cargo, but also something that has the potential to help back here on Earth, right? Because we're all looking to fusion to help us solve global warming. So being able to work on a technology that's even not just about space, but personally also has the potential to be so important on the ground at this point in my career has been very meaningful for me.
So fusion propulsion, yeah, that sounds like straight out of fiction.
I know, it's true, and yet fusion actually is created in machines around the world every day. Most of those are tokamaks, which are very large types of machines, but it is real, we do create it, and we're trying to make economical fusion reactors, but for space propulsion, you don't necessarily need to achieve the same milestones. You don't necessarily need net gain or high gain that you might hear we need for fusion to be able to make power. We don't need those kind of metrics for it to be useful for propulsion. So it's a great first application of fusion to put it in space. As someone told me once, well, we have an open end and some things can just go out the end. We don't need to worry about recycling some of those materials. It makes it a little simpler. Some things are harder about space. It has to be light enough to be able to be launched and to get us where we want to go. But then some things about putting fusion in space are actually easier. So yeah.
Could you talk about how is that possible, right? Like how we are now with propulsion to go into fusion?
So there are a lot of things, similarly even to our phone designs, that are making fusion more possible today than they have been. Why it's no longer maybe 30 years away, but maybe only 10 years away. A lot of that comes down to computing. So supercomputing, where we can study the plasmas that we're trapping to create fusion and learn how they're going to behave and actually predict how they behave much better, figure out how to control them. Superconducting materials, which are used in other applications like an MRI machine. And now we're making stronger MRI machines that are imaging your arm, where we're taking those same technologies and applying those to creating fusion. And so other materials, technologies, and advances, semiconductors, even the electronics that are in your electric car, those same electronics are going to be used to make fusion, where we can have really fast pulses of really high power to control plasmas. So a lot of things that we're seeing in the world around us are actually applicable to something like fusion. And that's why we're actually closer to achieving it now.
And to put this into context, right now, I'm going to oversimplify because I'm not a rocket scientist or a propulsion scientist, right? But the way in the world we get up to space right now is just chemical propulsion. I mean, we're just essentially, it's almost like lighting a controlled explosion and just shooting it out one side with gasoline, for lack of a better definition, or better example. But gasoline, blowing things up and just shooting fire out one side. That's how we do it. That's how all these big rockets are done right now today. And so people have been looking for better ways to use propulsion in space for a while. So we have things that are electronic based, where they can accelerate really fast, but there's not really enough power to make it, go fast quickly. Like it can't accelerate really quickly. It kind of accelerates slowly over time. And there's things like fusion where the power can really create a difference in what's called delta V, that the movement from one place to another. And so you're going to be able to. What technology like this enables is the ability to do things like go to Mars substantially faster than we could with chemical propulsion, the way that it currently stands. And so we're getting kind of deep in the sense that it feels kind of science fiction-y or what have you, and it may feel more like the boring side of science fiction. But when you watch The Expanse, that's all based on a fusion propulsion engine, right?
The Epstein drive.
The Epstein drive.
We're basically trying to make the Epstein drive real.
Yeah. So they're doing that. I mean. Obviously it's not going to look exactly the same or perform exactly the same as what they're saying, but it's essentially that same technology, and that's where you can have, with that level of technology, you can actually have a future that looks hopefully a little bit less dystopian than The Expanse, but can look almost exactly like The Expanse from a technology perspective and capability perspective.
And so one of the things as well is that there's a misconception of the space industry, right? So how are you getting your information out to the everyday people, right? Especially if we're in equity crowdfunding, it's for everyday people to invest early. They might have missed that space. They might have missed any sort of other industry, right? But how can they come in early to that?
Communicating it is always difficult. I think we live in a world where noise is incredibly high. We're all just in a fight or flight mode of don't waste my time. And so it's incredibly hard, right? We're always telling our story whenever we can as a platform, and also trying to help our founders tell their stories because what they're doing is really cool. And I think more importantly, not only is it cool, it's actually meaningful, right? I don't want to pick on, people that are doing stuff that's good for consumer or things like that. But fundamentally, if what they're trying to do exists, it's a whole different world. If we have another, brewery or what have you, like it's great and it can make investors a lot of money and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, another brewery, another consumer app or what have you, is that really going to change and make the future we want to see? So I think there is a resurgence of investors that are moving away from, I need to just make as much money as I can right now, and it's feels like I just, more money right away. And they're moving more towards, let's put money where a future is interesting. So I think there's a lot of people looking that way. I think it's a trend that's happening and will continue to happen over time. So getting that story out to as many people as possible is a constant challenge for us.
Is there anything in particular you can tell investors in equity crowdfunding about space? Something that they don't know that they should know right now?
From an investor perspective in an equity crowdfunding, I think that when you're investing in space, what I was mentioning here, there's a lot more opportunity. Most people think it's just billionaires, again, billionaires in rockets having fun, which is happening, right? I think we can all agree. But at the same time, there is a tremendous opportunity. And when you think about investing, one of the things you tend to look for are cool markets or big markets that no one else is in. And when you think about space, it's almost the definition of limitless opportunity, and as blue ocean of a market as you can get. And so while it may take a little bit longer to get those returns, in many cases it can, it is one of those things where if you do hit the home run shot, that's going to go really far, to borrow the baseball, analogy. But it's a much potentially bigger opportunity on the market. So, for example, a fusion opportunity, right? There's so many crazy things that can happen. And we talked about essentially the expanse, but imagine the expanse happening on a company's Epstein drive, if you will, where, they're making the money and selling all those engines. Hopefully they don't turn into hopefully you guys don't turn into the crazy billionaires that try and destroy the solar system. But, they
we're
probably
trying to
would be one of
save
them.
the solar system, right?
Exactly.
We're trying to create a future here on Earth for clean power. And with space, we're really looking at resource utilization, right? I have friends that are working on mining asteroids, mining the moon, creating bases for people, to go spend time on Mars. So in terms of people looking at space, it's exploding, both in terms of all those constellations that's creating all this value and telecom, remote sensing, but then actually really getting out there and going back to the moon and going back to these asteroids and, like I said, resource utilization. So there's a big space economy that's taking off, essentially, and really growing. And you mentioned the number of satellites, 3,000. Well, a few years ago, it was only in the hundreds of active satellites. So, I mean, it's exponential growth.
In the multiples, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, from going to go for, like, say, 2022, a couple thousand to double digits.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's tremendous growth.
Yeah. Well, Morgan Stanley is suggesting by 2040 it'll be $1 trillion industry. That's the low end of the projections. I think it's Merrill Lynch that's suggesting that same time frame, $3 trillion. And then now I'm forgetting who the other one was. Maybe Bank of America or someone was suggesting it'll be 1.4 trillion by 2030, so a full decade earlier. There's a lot of suggestions by much smarter people than myself that are projecting that there's a substantial growth in that economy, and it really needs to be thought of as an economy. It's similar to the internet and what happened when internet became a thing. Everyone thought of it as, oh, it's this little industry, it's kind of cute, you know, but then, you know, there was a time, I'm old enough, I guess, to remember when banking was not done and not considered viable on the internet. And now it's like, is Bank of America, because they operate on the internet, are they an internet company? I mean, no, they're a bank. They just operate in a new medium. Industry will operate in space. There will be finance in space. There will be a McDonald's in space. It's a when, not if situation. And then my job, as you know, someone who's trying to fund space, is to make it all happen ASAP, like as fast as reasonably possible. Because ultimately, I want to go to Mars. I want to be able to see it with my own eyes, and I don't want to be the person who goes there to die. You know, I want to be like the millionth customer with a nice hotel.
You want to come back.
Yeah, I want to be able to come back. Right.
So tell me, your marketplace kind of like brings all the space industry companies in. How are the rules different?
Versus like
Venture capital.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And then for Stephanie, on your perspective, why did you go with this route instead of VC route?
I'd be interested to hear your answer first, and then I'll get my stuff.
You know, we've talked to VCs, and there is a lot of money going into fusion today. Because our reactor is small, and because we're looking for these space applications early, I would say we don't align with some of those VCs, and also fusion has a longer time frame. Right, you know, we think we can make something work in 15 years, but I'm not going to tell someone I'm going to have a working reactor in 3 years. So we do have a longer timeline, which is typical of a lot of space technologies, but there are spin-offs and potential ways to make revenue in the short term. But for me, when I talk to people about what I do, you know, people are excited. My friends are excited. You know, people at conferences are excited. You know, people watch my videos. I get emails from people. Like, I can sense the interest. And when we found Space Ventures, who was focusing on just supporting, you know, space investments, I just knew, like, I think this is a great fit, and I think people will be excited about my technology. And and you guys agreed, and you thought that your investors are going to be excited about fusion propulsion. So it made sense for us now, and also kind of the amount of money we need right now to enable us to do what we need to do in the next year to then be attractive for further investment. So for us, it makes a good sense next step.
So it's important to think and understand how venture capitalists make money, right? Yeah. And I have plenty of friends and colleagues that are in venture capital. Venture capital is a great product. It is not an end-all, be-all financial solution, right, for every industry there is. Venture capitalists, in some cases, like to position it that way, right? Any way you need funding, it's venture funding. That's it, right? That's not true. The truth is venture capital has always been, interestingly enough, it's been the little brother to most other traditional financing. Venture capital, if you come from Wall Street, you kind of look at venture capital as like nice and cute, but it's not enough to be an investment banker and that kind of thing, right? So there are other ways of fundraising, and in fact, venture capital's always been small, and they've been kind of fighting this, this way of thinking that like they're kind of, doing fun little things for fun little returns. And so they've had to position this as, venture capital is huge, it's the only way to get money, and they have done some really good things, especially in the internet phase. But when venture capitalists make money, what they do is they get LPs to come in, limited partners, to give them money, and then they put it into a pool, and then they invest one person or a handful of people are making investment decisions. So what you're doing is you're centralizing not only the decision making, but you're centralizing the risk. So the benefit of centralizing risk and centralizing decision making is, you can get one person that knows a lot about an industry, and you can, really put a lot of money into one company, and it's like one transaction. The downside to that is when you come to earlier stage investments, like what these guys are doing right over here, because Fusion, if you make something that might be on the edge or just a little bit too early, and you make a decision that's wrong, your whole reputation's done. You may lose. You're going to probably lose your business. You may never be able to work again in venture capital. It's a big, high stakes game to make a risk like that. So what that means is they tend to, while they say they take a lot of risk, they tend to actually take quite a bit of less risk, and that's why they say to a lot of companies that are in space, come back to me when you have revenue. That's a way of de-risking it for themselves, right? If you have revenue, then I can grow that revenue for you. My money can help do that. In space, oftentimes, to be able to get commercial revenue, you're going to need $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, some number. There's a variety of different types of companies that need different types of money, but you're going to need something to get to that step first. So what's interesting about equity crowdfunding is you can diversify risk and diversify decision-making amongst thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people. And they can take individual risk in a way that's really tolerable from a risk perspective, but aggregated together, it's very meaningful and can change the world. And so that's why we did that. We said, okay, $100 checks combined together, enough of them combined together can make fusion drives an actual thing, can make the future, the expanse kind of future we want to see happen. And they can make a lot of money individually amongst themselves. But if they're wrong, which there's always a high chance of being wrong in any kind of venture scheme, right? You're dealing with 1 out of 10, where there's actual success, or maybe 1 out of 20, or 1 out of 30 actual success. So in such a scenario where you have a high probability of failure, you really want to, reduce the risk of failure. And if you're writing a $100 check, it's okay if you fail. If you write a $100 check and make 1,000x gain, that's great, right? That's a very good win, but you're not, worried about it if it doesn't work out.
So Stephanie, obviously the funding landscape has changed tremendously in 10 years, 5 years. From a founder's perspective, what are the changes you've seen that have helped your company?
We've actually been wholly private to now. So we sell commercial software, our company, Princeton Satellite Systems. We've done a lot of research projects for the government. We get small business research grants. That's all non-dilutive funding. So for us, this is actually our first time. The fusion propulsion does need more money than writing some software and studying some space systems. So this is the first time where we really need to bring in capital in order to, we have to build an experiment, right? We actually, with plasma science, with fusion, you need to make experiments and measure what's going on. So this is, again, our first time actually bringing in outside investment. And so this is the route we've chosen. And by the way, we just launched this week. So
yeah, and it's an important
goes.
distinction, because one of the things that we look for when we're looking for companies for our platform is traditional, like I said, venture capitalists. Their idea of traction is revenue. Normally commercial revenue. They don't look at like grants as revenue, and so it's an important distinction because we have to figure out other ways to find traction so that we can get in before venture capital. Because what will happen is they get a little bit further, then they're going to get dumped on with lots of venture capital funding or private funding, that kind of stuff. So how do we get in ahead of that? That's the question, right? So we need to figure out other alternative ways of traction, and they're you're just not being sold snake oil. That's a big concern. And so when the funding, now what's happening with equity crowdfunding, but also just smaller check writers getting involved in general, and tools that allow to aggregate checks together in a meaningful way. What's happening is, you are seeing opportunities go a little bit earlier, just before that venture capitalist is ready to take the plunge and put all their money in one big risk. So what we're seeing is companies like this, where they've diversified their risk by, or I should say, reduce their risk by working with NASA and other government agencies for a while to get their technology to a place where it's just prior to being commercially ready. And so we try and look at that. So for us, that's a way of de-risking this opportunity. NASA, you put $5 million, I'm not, these aren't the exact numbers, look at the page for exact numbers, but NASA put $5 million or whatever into this technology to create opportunities, and that it's gotten to a point where it's really close or close enough to where we can put some money in, and then they'll put some more money in. They'll get matching grants from Infuse, I think it is. That's doing
That's the
some.
Department of Energy program, correct? Yeah.
There's a lot of people that want this stuff to work, right? And so this is a really cool opportunity to work with people that have actually been intelligently building for a while, and we just think the timing is right? Is in the space side of things as well as in just where technology and fusion has been developing over the last couple decades.
Why do you think equity crowdfunding is so attractive to space companies now? Because you have so many on your platform, ranging from, people don't realize usually, but like space even hits the ocean.
Yeah.
It's all around us, right? And so why do you think equity crowdfunding has been so attractive to these companies?
I'll let you answer from your perspective if you have a perspective.
Well, it's the same reason that people are excited about space, and we feel that we can raise this way because people are going to be excited about what we're offering. And again, this is coming out of research. I think myself and the other companies on your platform, and these government grants that you talked about, these are your taxpayer dollars actually supporting research with the goal of it being commercialized, and then this is the next step. But they know that a small business research grant's not enough to get you to the finish line, and the idea is to get you far enough along that then you can bring in that private capital and actually build your final product and get it into space. So I would say this is sort of the natural progression, where when you're on the precipice of the valley of death, now crowdfunding can bring you back up and keep you in the game. The equity crowdfunding. So, I hope my friends and family are excited about now, having a piece of our company and helping us on this next step in our journey.
So then the other thing, right, and I'll speak a little bit for other founders that we've talked with and have come to the platform. You have a few things happening. One is, in my experience, especially in space, you're dealing with a lot of engineers and technical people that they don't want to waste their time going and fundraising. And so venture capitalists and others, they really like when founders fundraise and come pitch to them and ask for their money and woo them a little bit, and they like, because that means that they probably can raise money later too, right? There's reasons for it, that they kind of have that perception, but engineers really want to just build their thing and not have to divert all their attention away. That's why a lot of times people that have been successful are a pairing with a technical founder and a business development sort of person, someone who can fundraise or what have you. So, that sort of opportunity for us to bring the public to you is very interesting. But then also the idea of creating access to space. Almost everyone in space is way smarter than me, at least, but super smart, right? And so what you're dealing with are people that may seem kind of elitist. I think from the outside looking in, we're like, oh, they're too smart for me. They don't really need my help or whatever. But in most cases, they are always trying to open up access, because we all want to go to space in some way, shape, or form. And so these are people that are really trying and working their whole careers in many cases to open up access and make space more accessible to humanity, not just to billionaires, right, or governments, right? These are people that are really dedicated to that. So the idea of opening up access and bringing in just normal people and investing in them to help them build this, it's actually a very attractive thing, because it's just part of who they are. It's not I have to do this, I can't get money anywhere else, right? I want to bring the public in. It makes me feel like I'm doing the mission that I set out to do right from the get-go.
So you hit on elitist and unattainable.
Yeah.
Do you see the same way that we were able to commercialize air travel, we will be able to do the same with space travel? It might not happen now, right?
Yeah.
But do you foresee it in the future?
Yeah, I have I think, most people don't really realize that, but within 70 years, we went from essentially glorified paper planes that people were jumping on top of and flying to a full commercial industry, and we just fly, right? We get in it and do it, it's very normal. So if you put that same kind of timeline on when we started with space, we're we're approaching that number pretty quickly. So you could argue that we slowed down for a little bit, we focused on other stuff, what have you. Maybe it's still 20, 30, 40 years away. You can make that argument. I don't believe that's the case. But I think what will happen is the same way it happened before, right, with air travel. It was a science experiment. It was a thing for governments and militaries. Then it was a thing for rich people to like have an experience, and they all dressed up. And then it became accessible to everyone. And now, you know, at least in the States, everyone that goes on a plane is wearing like, you know, sweatpants just to be comfortable, right? It's not an experience anymore. It's not a thing you pay a lot of money to do. It's
a commodity.
It's a commodity. Yeah. And so it will happen. The question is when, not if. And so I think there's a lot of that. A lot of people are like, oh, look, these are just billionaires having fun. And there's so much opportunity on the commercial side. It'll all just naturally move the way it normally moves, which is, you know, towards bringing accessibility to a lot more people. Because, quite frankly, the business needs it, right? We want more customers. You cannot live alone on billionaires paying $50 million to go to space. There's not enough of them. Now, there's more billionaires than astronauts. That's why there's a market, because billionaires would like to be an astronaut. It's even more exclusive club than being a billionaire. But that will run out, because there's only like a few thousand billionaires, like 2,000 something billionaires. That's not a big enough market, even though they can write big checks to do it. So we need, as a commercial entities, they want to open up markets. There's capitalistic reasons to do that. So it'll happen. It's just a matter of when, not if. And again, it comes back to what we're trying to do: ramp up innovation so quickly that the when is way faster.
So Aaron, I see that you're doing amazing stuff trying to get SpaceX on board. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, so, so, you know, when we asked, so we have the world's largest community of space investors on our platform. It was a relatively low bar because there were not that many other people collecting everyone there. So we did that, but we do have, you know, the world's largest community of space investors. And so what we said was, what company do you guys want? Right, if we could get any company, you know, that's not public, what company should we go get or try to get onto the platform? And you probably could have guessed it, you know, but we just let them choose, and 82% of them came back and said SpaceX.
I want a piece of SpaceX.
Yes, everyone wants peace. Well, you know, it's really fun. Seeing what they're doing is crazy. Them launching huge, you know, rockets, landing them, and then now doing the Starship thing that seems like super futuristic. Of course, who wouldn't want to own a piece of that? And so what we did was just put it out there. I think the power of focus was really on display there. You know, normally people think, oh, you have a niche market, that's not interesting. What happens when you have a niche market is you get to all the right people at the right time and the right, you know, with the right audience and message. So once you do that, you're able to do cool things like what we did with the SpaceX petition, where within 8 to 12 hours, it was the world's largest. And then by now it's, you know, 10x the closest competitor. And the closest competitor was, I think, WeFunder, who's 100 times our size, by the way. But we have a petitions that's more than 10 times the size of what they were able to achieve. So that power of focus, we're able to do that, we're able to bring that together, and now we're able to have real meaningful conversations with SpaceX and say, hey, is there a way for us to make this happen? So there's still ongoing. There's no real things to report. We do report, you know, via email to everyone that's on that list, is interested and eagerly waiting for an opportunity. You know, we give them updates and things like that, but, you know, there's nothing to report publicly just yet.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. And so with that being said, is there anything that you want to share about your company that maybe we can't find through a search engine? Any insight, right? Like investing with on space ventures, your company getting them that knowledge that they might want to continue to have that insight?
You know, I think one of the things that kind of goes under the radar with what we do is just the amount of due diligence we put into our deals. We have requirements when it comes to regulators to not make it feel like we're de-risking things too much, because fundamentally, when you're investing, there's still a lot of risk, and you can have the best company in the world, and they can go under for things that have nothing to do with them. It can be acts of God in some cases, right? Like, it's just crazy stuff. So there's still a lot of risk. And so the regulators look at what we do and make sure we don't ever make it seem like we're reducing risk too much. So with that in mind, a lot of the stuff we do kind of goes unreported publicly. And so, but we have a group of advisors that look at all the deals that go onto our platform. It's at 27 or so at this point. We're still adding more. And they have a combined 300 years or more of space experience and aerospace experience and technology due diligence. So they look at this stuff. They look at it intensely. They don't just brush it over, but they do look at it. They look for opportunities for, meaningful opportunities for the public to be invested. And we don't say yes to everybody. In fact, we're having conversations ongoing with well over, several hundred space companies at this point. And not even anywhere close to that has made it to our platform. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. We try and talk to everyone, but we're quite selective with who we put out, because my responsibility, I think, is to the public, and I want to put things that are really have good potential to be out there. Anything on your side?
I actually think if people want to learn more about our company, they can find everything by typing it into a search engine, because we've done so much technical communications over our work, right? We're engineers, we're researchers, we publish papers, we have our blog. There's a lot of videos of myself, giving seminars and giving talks about fusion propulsion, so you can actually find out an awful lot. If people go in and search, for direct fusion drive or, spacecraft control toolbox, we're right on top. So I would encourage people to use their search engine. So I don't know that I can think of any special secrets, except, we've been working on this stuff, for a long time, and we've had this collaboration with the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab, where our plasma experiment is located, for over 10 years. So, this is not a paper study in our case, right? This is real science, real engineering happening, real experiments happening at a lab, and we're trying to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute honor speaking with you, learning about your companies. And for everyone out there, how can they find y'all?
So you can go to spacedventures.com. That's space with a D, spacedventures.com, and you can see all the companies that are raising on our platform right now, including Stephanie's company, Princeton Satellite Systems, PSS, doing really cool things, and several others as well. What's your site?
No, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we have our website. We're tweeting now, we're on Twitter, so I think we're pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so
very
much, Kristen, and thanks everyone for watching.